Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So again, this is Danny Katz, Executive Director of COPERG, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Representative Terri Carver. This is part of our conversations at the Capitol, and today we're going to be talking about a bill, HB 1099. Thank you, Representative, for joining me today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and what a joy it was to work with COPERG and others to get this bill passed.
Absolutely. So just as a quick overview, so HB 1099 on paper, what it says is that it's going to require big sellers who use those online marketplaces to provide more information about who they are, a little bit more transparency and disclosure there. Can you talk a little bit about where this idea came from and what motivated you to bring this bill forward?
Well, I was contacted by a local Home Depot in my district several years ago, about 3, and they asked me to come down and get a briefing from their staff on the increasing organized retail theft that they and other big box stores were experiencing. And so after an hour and a half briefing, and not just what they were experiencing, but how they saw this criminal activity increasing every year. And the same individuals then they had a system for hitting the big box stores periodically. And so when we talked about what might help, we talked about a range of issues on how to deal with organized retail theft. And certainly one of the biggest components of dealing with this was to address the fact that these criminal theft gangs, were stealing the product from Home Depot and others and immediately putting it online for sale. So unlike in the past where thieves would take their stolen goods and take them to a pawn shop, and Colorado, like many other states, had long regulated pawn shops to try and deter stolen goods from being fenced there. These thieves were using online marketplaces, which didn't have any of those deterrents as far as our ability to identify the legitimate sellers versus the criminals and to exclude the criminals from the online marketplace. So that's really what triggered my involvement in this whole area. And we were thrilled to finally get this bill through.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it feels like this bill offered a different, a number of places for other groups to come together, because it wasn't just what you were describing as one of the problems with this sort of lack of transparency in these online marketplaces. I know for COPERG, we do an annual toy safety report, and we were increasingly finding counterfeit toys that were being sold in ways that weren't meeting basic safety or consumer protection guidelines. We saw masks during the pandemic that were being sold that were counterfeit and weren't meeting the safety protocols there as well. So we were strong advocates and supporters of this bill too. And we weren't the only ones. Were you surprised by how much support you had in so many different places? I know the Attorney General also testified in support. So can you talk a little bit about just the broad support you saw for this?
Well, after I had the briefing from my local Home Depot, and I reached out to the DAs and law enforcement, to my Democrat colleagues. Of course, the Colorado Retail Council was a very strong advocate for addressing this increasing threat to their businesses. It was getting so aggressive, and beyond just the sheer financial loss the businesses were sustaining, these criminal gangs were getting more and more aggressive with employees and customers, and really creating a public safety issue, a potential violence. And so we were thrilled. We knew we had the business community. We knew we had DAs and law enforcement. And quite frankly, when COPERG approached us with this other aspect, right? It's not just how do we stop the fencing of stolen goods? how do we deter as best we can these criminal gangs doing retail theft. But Coperg really brought a very important perspective to this problem, in that the same approach to deter stolen goods could also be quite effective in deterring the sale of counterfeit goods, because the same kind of requirements on the high volume sellers to identify themselves, right, to show they're in fact
Yeah.
legitimate sellers,
Yeah.
would certainly speak to the huge counterfeit goods issue, which presents, as you folks testified, great potential harm to consumers with unsafe products.
Yeah. And I'm really appreciative of this policy, because I think it's another example of, states leading. So there is a similar policy in Congress, but it hasn't moved yet. And so having a state like Colorado step up, and I think other states will hopefully do the same thing, it can be a model, our laboratories of democracy at work, and showing, where we should be heading on a national level as well. So hopefully this is a model for that too.
Exactly. And as you're very well aware, Danny, we had hoped that the federal bill in the US Congress would pass. And we tried to keep our bill as close in line with the proposed federal bill, because we understand it is burdensome for sellers to have to comply with various different state standards. So we tried to keep to that model, understanding that, of course, this is an interstate problem, right?
Yeah.
The huge investigation that made the newspapers early in January, involving big box stores and pharmacies being hit in Colorado, Arkansas, Kansas, and a few other states. It was a $10 million criminal ring. And within an hour, that product was online to be sold. So it is an interstate problem. And so, but we simply could not wait, given the growing crime that was occurring in Colorado. We could not wait any longer for the federal government to take action. So Colorado has passed this. Several other states have passed. We would hope that our US Congress would take this up as soon as possible.
Great. Well, it was great to see your leadership on this issue. I always like to ask, public service, not always the most, you don't always get the most gratefulness from the people, out there. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit about what motivated you to be an elected official, a state representative, and sort of what kept you. I know you served many, many years at the Capitol. What sort of kept you going, motivated you on a daily basis?
Well, actually, it's the people in my district. So people in my district, businesses, individuals, bring me issues where a law needs to be changed or strengthened. And that really, I find that very satisfying work. And while my prior life was as an Air Force JAG, I also worked for a member of Congress in DC when I was in my 20s. And she was very much focused on her local district. And I just think that that's the right model. We are there as representatives of our district to govern well and to address the issues that are important to our constituents. And I think with that approach particularly, which I personally believe in very strongly, that when our constituents bring us an issue and then we approach our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, many times they will find their constituents are having the exact same issues.
Yeah.
And there is really a common basis then when we recognize mutually the problem and then working together to find the right solution. And I think that's what Coloradans want us to do. and to build coalitions around your primary goal, consumer protection, public safety, and also those huge losses by the retail businesses means what? They have to raise prices to cover those losses, which impacts everybody. So I just thought it was a great example of how lawmaking should be done in a way that the people in our state appreciate.
Great. Well, again, thank you for your leadership and thank you for your service at the Capitol. And on that note, thank you everybody for watching, and you can see some of our other conversations at the Capitol on our website. So thank you very much, Representative Carver.
Thank you.